Welcome back to another episode of RNT Fitness Radio, and today I'm joined by Tiffany Shlain, author of one of the best books I've read in the past year, 24/6. I got a copy of her book by accident a few months ago, and I read it all in one weekend. I was hooked from the get-go, and it's taken my own digital health practices to the next level. In this episode, we discuss why everyone should live a life of 24/6, which is effectively unplugging from all screens one day a week, and what the life-changing benefits are from this practice. We also discuss the practicalities of this day, how to do it as a family, tech use for children, and how to manage your digital health the other 6 days of the week. Going off the grid one day per week is one of the best things I've done for my overall well-being in recent times, and I highly recommend you do the same. So without further ado, let's dive in. And I was looking at it on the side, I was reading like the first few pages, and the next thing you know, 2 days later, I'd gone through the whole thing. I'd taken it away. And then I DM'd that very day. As soon as I finished it, I DM'd you. I was like, I've got to have her on the podcast to speak about this.
Oh, great. That makes me it's so interesting because a lot of people finish it very quickly. And, I love that because as a filmmaker, I think one of the hardest things that I was trying to figure out when I was writing it is when I make a film, I have your attention, right? For like 90 minutes in a theater. And I know that I can spend months reading a book, which is like a different kind of relationship. But I love it when people tell me they finish it quickly because I know that like you were in it with me. You were like in the experience with me completely.
Yeah, I was completely immersed into your whole story, why you started this, why it's important. And then I was looking at ways to implement it in my own life. And, since I've read it, I think it's now been, I've done it 3 or 4 times now.
Great.
So I'm finding my groove with it, and luckily I've always been.
It takes a couple, several times to kind of figure out what you need, and then you always have next week, and it's like a constant, and some are amazing, and some you're like, oh, I forgot this one thing, but in general, I don't know if you feel it, but you start to crave it, and then it really starts to have to do this whole other thing.
Yeah, it's almost like the balance now having my week because like yourself, I think you talked about in the book, you're so used to working 24/7. And then when you now have this day where it's essentially a day of rest, you can almost blitz your way through the week knowing you've got this at the end. And it almost becomes almost like a reward.
Yes. Yeah. Wait, we should be recording all this.
Oh, we are recording.
Okay. I didn't know. Sometimes people say, okay, now we're recording. Good. I'm glad because that's great. Yeah, it is. It's my reward. That's a great way to frame it. It's a reward for all the hard work is to just be able to be off and think and be in a totally different way. But I love that thinking of it. I don't write about that. I don't think in the book that way, but it is my reward every week. It's like I get to get a tech Shabbat. And it's the reward for being on all the time is you can kind of turn off to the online world, but then really turn yourself back on. I feel like I get myself back.
Yeah, exactly that. You almost it grounds you and gives you that anchor in the week. My only early thoughts, you've been doing this for 10 years. So I'd love for the listeners to know, firstly, who Tiffany Shlain is and why you started living a life of 24/6.
Yeah. My background is deeply immersed in technology. I am in no way anti-tech. And I think a lot of people that are, maybe think that it off that you are, but I'm not at all. I spent my career founding the Webby Awards, which honors the best of the web, and always experimenting with new technology. And then I went back to filmmaking, and I run a film studio in San Francisco, and we do a lot of experimentation with using the web to make films, collaborative films, and I do a lot of speaking. So I think the different areas in my life are, filmmaking, technology, and kind of speaking and performing. And I was living in a way, I remember the iPhone coming out was a really distinguishing moment because suddenly you could bring this supercomputer with you everywhere. And I think everyone did, including myself. And by 2009, I did not like the way I was feeling. I'm a very focused person, and I was feeling so distracted all the time. Like I was in a constant state of being nowhere. And I was just being pulled and beeped and notified and not present. And during that period, I had these two very dramatic events happen, which my father was diagnosed with brain cancer and given 9 months to live the same week I found out I was pregnant after, multiple miscarriages. So it was like these two life moments. And I started thinking a lot about time. And of course, when I would go visit my father, I would turn off my phone. And then he did pass away, and my daughter was born days later. And my husband and I, and we are Jewish, but we're not religious Jews. I would say we're cultural Jews. Like, we like the humor and the food and the history, but not the religion. Not that we don't like it. We're just not. That's not who we are. And we did Shabbat. And what Shabbat is some people call it the Sabbath, but it is a nice. If you're a really Orthodox Jew, it's a full day of rest, no electricity, no driving. But if you're more like a cultural Jew, most of my friends, if you do Shabbat, you'll do a Shabbat dinner. You'll light the candles, you'll have challah, you'll have people over, set the table really nice, but it kind of ends at dinner. So, here I had this very dramatic thing happen. I didn't like the way I was feeling. And I wanted to value life more and presence more. My father had been a very present person. And of course, my daughter and my older daughter and family. And I wanted to honor being present more. So my husband and I started doing something that we call technology Shabbat. So Friday night to Saturday night, we turn off all screens. We always have people over on Friday night, so we do that part of the Shabbat ritual. But for us, the modern interpretation of a day of rest in the 21st century is to turn off the screens. We were part of an organization called Reboot that was kind of rethinking Jewish rituals, and they turned off screens for one day, and we just never stopped. And so we've done it for 10 years. Almost every weekend, and it's been so life-changing. And the longer that we've turned off the screens one day a week, the more crazy everyone's become with technology. So I would definitely say my husband and I are early adopters because he's a professor of robotics. I founded the Webby Awards. We're always kind of using technology ahead of others and experimenting with it, and I think got addicted much quicker than others. And I wanted it. I didn't like the way it was making my brain feel and my soul feel. So so that's kind of me in a nutshell. It is the best thing I've ever done in my life. My children are living results of knowing how to live without the screens one day a week. And it's literally our family's favorite day of the week. And like you said, a reward. It feels like a deep vacation. It feels like I think better. I come up with better ideas. I'm more productive the next day. It like resets me every week. So finally, a couple of years ago, I thought, I have to share this idea. It's free. It's thousands of years old. And in many ways, I do yoga and meditation, but I'm not Hindu or Buddhist. So I thought I need to take the concept of Shabbat and spread it as far and wide as possible and liberate it from being just Jewish, liberate it from just being for Orthodox Jews. And a complete day of rest could benefit absolutely everyone. It's a beautiful, elegant idea, and it can bring so much life back for people.
Amazing. I mean, you've said it's been life-changing for you, and you've touched on some of the benefits. When you speak to other people, when you reflect on your own family's benefits, what have been the most common answers that you hear as to why it's been so beneficial and why other people should do this?
Okay, I'll just list a couple. I'll say I sleep better on that one night. So what is that saying about the phone waking us up the other days? I think better. I'm more creative. I'm more connected with my family and myself. I'm more reflective. I get better perspective. And now that the book's come out, I recommend all your listeners who want to try it to join. I started a group on Facebook called 24/6 Living. And there's so many people on it that are doing it. And it's just read what they're writing. I mean, from people with little kids, teens, people without kids, married, single, every age group. And they're just saying, like you have to figure out the first couple of weeks what you need to do it correctly. And then they're like, oh my God, this was like the best day I've had in so long. And I think people can't believe they can live without the phone. But again, this is just one day every week. And it's actually so good to remember how to live without the phone. And then the word I always I keep coming back to is I feel liberated. Like the first hour of Tech Shabbat, I'm still thinking of things I need to do. So I keep a piece of paper and I'm like writing down things. And then after an hour, I'm like set free. And then I'm not thinking about things outside of my house. I'm just in the moment. And whereas the online world makes you, I think, leaves you in a constant state of wanting more stressful news, wanting to buy the thing, wanting to do the thing, wanting to connect to it, and wanting. I find when I turn it off, I am so grateful for what I already have. And it like switches me so quickly from a state of want to a state of gratitude and appreciation and presence. It's like miraculous to me.
Do you find that when you're coming back online again, you almost feel a bit of anxiety that you got to go back to the, almost like, I was going to say the real world, but in the state of the world we live in, it is, I mean, the digital world, when you come back into it, there's almost that anxiety of, oh my God, there's so much that's about to come into my inbound.
Yeah.
I'm just going to be hit by all of these notifications and
right, the inbox of your brain. Well, but I think that is also really great. Is it really helps me think about it differently. So I think because people are connected all the time, they don't have that perspective. But every week I say what you're saying. I'm like, whoa, and I sometimes feel anxious. Sometimes there's something I need to check, and there's so many feelings wrapped up in it, and you become more aware of that switch. And just, I don't think we were ever designed as humans to be on 24/7. I mean, even when you're training, you need to do interval training. You need to give your body a break to build muscle. Babies are told to not be overstimulated and take them out of the room. I think we're just so overstimulated right now. And, people are sleeping with their phones or checking it throughout the night. We weren't designed this way. And every kind of, and I put a lot of this into the book. I have a lot of neuroscience and physiology research and sleep research. I mean, there's so much research that backs up that you need to put your body into a state of rest. So that's 8 hours every night. And I believe also a full 24 hours every week. There's even a study. There's some very religious Christian Americans, I don't know if they're not just Americans, but I know the studies were done in America, Seventh-day Adventists. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but they keep a real Sabbath, for religious reasons. And multiple studies have shown they live 10 years longer. Multiple studies. I mean, it's been backed up. Like, everyone points to this one study, because I'm doing research now on the benefits of unplugging, and everyone points me to these studies, because it's so reinforced with multiple studies that if you take a complete day of rest every week, you could potentially live 10 years longer.
So what are some of the most common barriers to adopting 24/6 lifestyle, do you think there are, that you come across?
People will say, some people say, oh, I just need to, what if somebody needs to reach me? Or my kids, some people say, well, my kids don't live near me, they're grown up. And I have a landline, and I say that in the book, that having a landline, so it's not like if I need to call someone, I can call on the landline. So it's not like I'm completely disconnected from communication. I'm just disconnected from the screen. So I do talk about a couple of analog things it would be great to have to do tech Shabbats, which is a landline, which is really great in real emergencies, like natural emergencies. It's also really great for finding your lost cell phone. And it's really great for tech Shabbat. So I recommend a landline. Let's see, some of the other barriers. Well, sometimes people say, oh, for my work, I have to be available. And then I really push back on that, because my father was a surgeon, an emergency room surgeon. And even he used to go on call to other doctors so he could get a break. You don't want someone to be a surgeon that's never sleeping or never getting a day off. So even a real profession that is saving human lives can take a break. And I think you could probably figure out a way to go on call to someone, tell your boss, I need a complete day, not available, so I can recharge and contribute the best way to your company. I have a lot of responses, and I go into that in the book, but I push back a lot on that, because I think a lot of us have made ourselves available. And I think we need to push back in general. I think we need more boundaries with work. And I think everyone, your cell phone is a conduit to such a combination of work and pleasure and news and FOMO and social media and stress. It's such a mixed bag of what you're getting every second you pick up that phone. And of course, some things are great. You feel love and connection, but it's also such a mixture. And I think we need to recreate some boundaries. And this boundary of a day of rest is one of them.
I mean, for those of us who work online, I mean, my business is all online. All my team work online remotely. And I know a lot of people generally work remotely and do a lot of their work online. What advice do you give to these people who are in these professions where they have that, it's often difficult to find those boundaries and everything becomes blurred?
Yeah. Well, I think you could be a model, a role model for others. I think a good thing to do to your community, if your work is online, so much of my work is online. First of all, in my email signature, I say, I take a full day each week off of technology to recharge and refresh from Friday night to Saturday night. So it's in my email signature. And on social media, I post every Friday at around 6:30, usually a shot of the sunset, and I say, I'm going offline. I'll see you on the other side. So that's another way to establish community with your people, but it's setting an example that I think is really important. And invite them to try it with you. I mean, I think you're all about health and fitness and mental, like, how do you encourage people to think? Like, a lot of people talk about New Year's resolutions, and they're talking about, I want to drink less, I want to exercise more, I want to eat better. Well, your relationship to digital technology should be part of that equation. Like, I want to do an animation of like a plate of like, protein, vegetables, fruit. There should be a plate of your day. Sunshine, reflective thinking, screen time, social time. Like, we really need to start thinking about, when do screens enhance how you're living and when does it diminish it? And when should you just turn them off and go for a walk outside?
Yeah, I mean, the reason why I think you have a lot of credibility, especially in your story, is because you're very relatable in that, you run your own company, but you also have a family, and you're very, very present in their upbringing as well. So you are that, the working mother, essentially, who's still able to do this and put such an important premise on it. And I'm assuming you're around a lot of working mothers as well. How do you advise them to go about it, or people who just generally think they're too busy to do so?
Yeah, I think I would really think about the word too busy, and what are you too busy doing? And, a lot of people, this is another barrier. It's like, oh my God, we have so many activities on the weekend. How would we coordinate? And I will really push back on that and say, why do you have so many activities on the weekend? Do you think that's good for your family, for you? Like, to overschedule every second of your weekend? And again, I think it's just the way we all started living. We need to monetize and optimize every second and plan things every moment. And there's so much value to lying fallow. Even crops after 7 years, they need to let them lie fallow. So I think really having people think about, what is the busy, and what kind of values are you stating for your family if you're all in a constant state of busy all the time? And do you really feel like you're connecting? And I mean, I just got finished with winter break, and I know there were more screens around because our schedules were, the rhythm was not the normal state. And I did not, it's a lot. What do you think, Bluma? My 10-year-old amazing daughter just woke up here in San Francisco. I know we're in a different time zone.
How did she find it? So that, I know one thing you talk about in the book is that your daughters love this, and the generation growing up, they don't know a life without being online.
I think you have to make it fun. It's not a day of not having, like, Friday night dinner, first of all, when it starts, is like our favorite night. We always have people over. We make a beautiful meal. We set a table with flowers. It's very fun. It's like, I don't think people have enough dinner parties. This is like a dinner party every week when you have a Shabbat meal. So that's a very fun night. Like, that's the night we all look forward to. We have their friends' families over. It's not just, it's a fun night. And then on Saturday, there's a lot of hanging out. We read, we bike, and sometimes, listen, we're human. Sometimes Bluma will say, can I say what you sometimes say? No, she's looking at me now.
What was someone saying?
Well, okay, can I tell this one story of once when you were like, I'm bored? Because that does happen on Shabbat. But then she proceeded to create this amazing creative scavenger hunt in the living room. That blew my mind.
That never happened.
Honey, you probably don't remember it, but it was one of those moments where your creativity was just in full shine, I think, because you had a moment to do something that wasn't with technology. That's what I think. My 16-year-old daughter too will say, She loves not having to do homework also. That they're under a lot of pressure. I mean, she's in America, your junior year is your most stress-filled year because she's got like, I don't know, 5 or 6 hours of homework a day. And she gets a day of rest from homework, which is, again, it's not good for anyone's brain to be like pounding at it 7 days a week, 24/7. So she gives herself permission as part of Tech Shabbat to have that day off. And I think that's for a lot of people, is that they feel like they can't have the permission to do it, which that's been exciting. The book, I'm like, I'm officially giving you permission. I don't think anyone needs it, but sometimes they need to hear, yeah, it's okay. But I think going back to family is that it should be a fun day. Shabbat, the more I've researched about it, it's a day filled with delight. We cook, we go, we swim, we read, we nap, we hang, we make forts, whatever it is, it should be like a fun day.
Yeah. Can you give an example of your most recent Shabbat and what you guys did as a family?
Yeah. Okay. This is a good one. The most recent Shabbat, Bluma, our youngest, invited us into her room and she created a spa. And she put, it was fantastic. Like that never would have happened. We're all lying in her room. She put on spa music, and she's 10, and she was putting nice smells and sprays and created this whole spa experience. And we were just like lying there. She gave us blankets. It was like a cold day that day. And how long did we do that for, do you think? An hour. We were just lying on the ground as you were running an imaginary spa. Now, that would never happen during the week. It wasn't imaginary. It was real, right? That would never happen. I mean, when would you be like, oh, one more email, or I'll be there in a second, or I've got to go to this. And then we went to her basketball game. Oh, a lot of people want to know, we are able to maintain being on sports teams during Tech Shabbat, because a lot of people say, oh, my kids have soccer games, football, basketball, whatever. And we've done it with 2 kids in soccer, and we did basketball. The one thing we might do is look up on GPS how to get there if we can't figure it out. But most fields we know how to get to. And we'll usually have one person on the team that has our landline to call us if a field changes, or that I'll check in with. But we all existed before smartphones. You actually look quite young. Did you exist before smartphone? How old are you?
I actually did, yeah. I'm 27.
Okay, you look quite young.
Yeah, my first phone was a Nokia 3310. So.
Okay, there was just an article about how that phone's still out and it's still a very used phone. And it's funny that you say that. But yeah, we all existed. I mean, you make a plan and you just stick to it. And I think a lot of people don't do that anymore, because you can just change your plans. I'm going to be late. Oh, I'm around the corner. I'm parking. You're texting all this information, and you change plans very quickly because you can. But, people used to make a plan and just did it. So when we have to go to a sports game, that's what we do. I'll usually, if we do have a plan with people, although I try not to make too many plans on Shabbat. That's another thing. It's like, I'm so busy all throughout the week. The other 6 days is like, so much is going on. One day, what? It's almost 8. We have about 10 more minutes. It's the one day I try to not make too many plans. And on Friday night, we don't go out. We invite people over. So if people want to see us, like, come on over for dinner. And it's very fun. We need to bring a lot more of that back into society. The having dinner at people's houses, cooking for people. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it's nice not having the calendar packed on that day. I don't have anything on that day anymore, Saturday.
Nice. Nice.
And just whatever comes up in the day, it will be, but it won't be work or anything screaming.
Beautiful. That's exactly, it's like creating that separation of that's your reward day. Yeah. And even if you like what you do.
Yeah.
Because some people say, oh, this one guy said to me, oh, my girlfriend just loves what she does. I love what I do. But and even if I have ideas for movies or my book, I just write them by hand that day. So I do feel quite creative that day, but I don't let myself apply that idea to do something. I just sit with the idea, which actually lets it grow in a totally different way.
Yeah, you're more creative. And I know you're a big fan of journaling as well, aren't you?
I'm a big journaler, yeah. Oh, yeah. That's another thing I do the other 6 days. And in the book, I talk about a lot of strategies the other 6 days. As I wake up, I don't look at my phone anymore, which was huge because that's how I used to wake up. And now I do a 5-minute journal, which is really wonderful. It's just 3 lines on what you're grateful for, 3 lines on what would make today great. and you think about your day, and it helps you kind of project out what do you want the day to be. And then at the end of the day, I write in there what were 3 great things that happened, which are often very different than I thought. And then I write 1 thing I wish I did differently, a little reflection. And Bluma is trying to help me set up. I've got this new alarm clock. I've been experimenting with a lot of alarm clocks because I still do have my phone wake me up, but it's on airplane mode and I keep it off in the morning, but I'm trying to think of a different strategy there. So I'm trying out this alarm clock that gives smell to wake you up. Do you use that?
I thought you were going to say light. I have a light alarm clock.
Oh, Bluma has a light alarm clock. Yeah, I do too, but I'm not using that part.
That's a point.
Yeah. Do you like that?
The light alarm clock doesn't wake me up because I sleep really deep.
She sleeps through the light.
I've been doing it. I mean, it means I don't have to bring my phone into the bedroom, which is a big win in itself.
Yeah. So do you read before you go to bed?
Yeah, I just chill out and go have a shower and then head to bed. But my biggest problem is using my phone in the evenings. I know there's a direct correlation with my sleep and using my phone in the evenings. And it's usually the time where I chill out a bit more. So I'm not working. So I'll go on my phone more. And that's the problem. So that's my next solution in how I can combat that.
Yeah, I think reading is really good to calm the mind down. Like I wait 1 second. It's 8. Yeah. 10 minutes if I have to go. I like to really read and I take a bath. So you take a hot shower. So I immerse myself in hot water it's a beautiful way to calm down. And I'm really trying to read more because I was working on my book. I was so immersed in that. And now I'm enjoying reading a lot of fiction, which I haven't for a while. I was a big nonfiction reader. But reading calms my mind down. But like you, if I go onto my phone at night, it'll inevitably something will influence like something I'm worried about or some note that I'm thinking about for the next day. And it interrupts my sleep and it makes me not sleep as well.
Yeah, and then you see one thing, and then you said in the book it was so brilliant. You're like, they come up in your dreams. And
you don't want them in your dreams.
Yeah, you see something on social media triggers you, and you see in your dream.
Oh my gosh, that has happened so many times. I'm like, I do not want that person in my dreams. They're not. Yeah.
So coming back to the family aspect and managing tech with. How do you manage tech with your children from a day-to-day perspective?
This is a constant challenge. I mean, I think I'm like any parent where you think you have one thing and then a new thing crops up. But my husband and I are working on this iPad contract. Oh, it's 30 minutes a day during the week for recreational. And if they're doing homework, like Bluma likes to do homework with her friends on like FaceTime, and that's fine. But then the boundaries get slippery because sometimes things, you have to constantly revisit it. That's what I think it is that some new app like TikTok comes around and then it's like, oh my gosh, this could like take up our whole lives. That needs a new boundary. And I think it's a constant conversation. Is this healthy? Does it make you feel good? Are you zoning out? Does it make you feel bad? Does it give you FOMO? Is it creative? I think it's a constant conversation for, using how you're using your screen. And obviously a lot of schoolwork is done on screens. So bracketing out that's why I have a problem with the screen time limits on the iPhone, because they don't distinguish what you're really doing. So we're looking into one that my husband he was like, oh, I found this one that measures exact time on particular apps. And I think sometimes that can work. But it's a constant conversation, and we've had iPhone contracts that we've done. And we're both of our daughters, I'm part of, and I really advise your listeners who have kids to check out an organization called Wait Until 8th. And it's waituntil8.org. And it's about waiting until 8th grade, which is about 14, 15 in America, the school system, to get your kid a smartphone and get them like a Nokia or some other option before then, because there's so much research that handing your kid a supercomputer at such a malleable age for their brain will just... flip phone. You can get a flip phone. It's just not good for the brain. I make a lot of films on neuroscience, and they're just wiring them up for addiction and not being able to ever give themselves space to think without a screen.
And if they see their peers holding these supercomputers in their hands at the age of
what do you say?
If they see their peers and friends holding, these supercomputers in their hands. 10 and 12 years old. How do you get around that?
I think it's a problem. I mean, there's a big article in the New York Times yesterday, which of course I cited in the book a different research, but it's a new research study that teen suicide has gone up 57% since 2007. That was exactly when the iPhone came out. Doubled. I think they're just not prepared to deal with all the social stuff that happens online and what they can see. I mean, just type in the word sex. I did it I was looking for a graphic to make some fun graphic on sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And I just innocuously typed that in looking for a vintage image. And oh my God, just see what you see. And just think about when you started being curious about sex. I mean, that happens around between 6 and 8 years old. And are you ready to see the array of things you're seeing then? I'm not saying that, it's not I just think that, this organization I'm a part of talks about it like driving. First you have them in a car seat facing backward, then you put them forward, and then they eventually go to the front seat, and then they get a permit and you're driving with them, and then they get their license. And right now we're just handing them the car with the keys at a super young age. And it's just think about that. And the way we're feeling, and we have brains that are more developed with the prefrontal cortex. I mean, you give it to a kid that their brain's all in the most malleable state, and you're pretty much wiring them up to be flipping the wrist every second they're bored, every second they have a moment, and not know how to be bored. I mean, that's what I was saying. My daughter's at school now, but she was like, Mom, giving me that look like, don't tell that story. But she does say to me sometimes, I'm bored. Not my older daughter, because she loves it, because she sees it as a reward now. But when you're younger, I think you can be, we do fill the table with board games and art and try to think of all the things that everyone loves to do. But there will be times when she'll say that. And I always try to segue that's always my on-ramp to creativity. That feeling of nothing to stimulate me is usually when my best ideas come. And if you can make that connection, then filling your mind always with so much stimulation and so much activity all the time, you'll realize you are depriving yourself of that mode of thinking.
Yeah, one thing I'm talking about a lot at the moment is unplugged walks. So while we're recording a podcast here, which is great, and I think podcasts are a great way to absorb information, but if every single walk you go on is filled with a podcast, I don't feel like you get the benefits that a walk really brings.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think about the podcast thing a lot because, of course, I love podcasts.
Yeah.
But I wrote in the book that, your brain needs 2 hours of silence a day to regenerate in the hippocampus, which really influenced me. So normally when I get in the shower, I'll put on the news or I'll put on music or a podcast. And now I'm like, just take a shower. Take a shower. And then when I go for a walk, I'll just be like, just walk. Because, and this goes back to needing to optimize and improve yourself and learn something and be engaged every second. And what you realize is you think you're becoming the superhuman, but you're depriving yourself of this other state of mind that's really important. And every great wisdom practice from every culture talks about the value of silence and reflection. And we've created a society with no room for that.
What is this altered state of mind you're talking about?
Well, it's actually called the Default Mode Network, and I made a film about it called The Case for Dreaming, and it's basically when you're focused on something, like doing a task or listening to something, you're in the task positive mode, and that's a certain mode for your mind. And the Default Mode Network is when your body's moving, like walking, taking a shower, doing the dishes, driving, but it's kind of on autopilot a little bit, the movement of your body. And it frees your mind up to go into this mode called the Default Mode Network, where your mind starts making connections of stuff that's already in your mind. Past experiences, the past, present, future. Your mind starts kind of wandering. And that wandering, that thought wandering, is where creativity comes from. Because usually creativity comes from two unusual thoughts coming together and making a new one. So when you are out walking, which I love that you're promoting that of just walking, you put your mind in the default mode network. So when you exercise, a lot of times that happens, not with a lot of stimulation around you. So as a creative person, as a filmmaker, I'm always trying to get into that juicy creative space. So journaling, default, walking, dishes. Now I get really into the dishes because I'm like, I'm just going to just go in there. It's like gets me in the mode.
Yeah, there's definitely something to be said for not filling the time gaps in your day. But it's very difficult as well because you're almost trying to fight something you've programmed into yourself, or you see other people around you always doing. So you get that sense of FOMO sometimes, which is.
Well, I think again, I was walking on this pathway near my house that I walk on a lot, and I said hi to someone. They didn't respond, and then I saw the little white in their ears, and I was just thinking, those are going to get smaller and smaller and smaller, and soon you're not even going to know when people are listening. And I think that Google Glass or some form of it's going to come back. So I think as these technologies become more invisible and more everywhere, even more of a need to demand and protect our humanity, to say, I value also being offline and just thinking on my own. And thinking on my own. That's what we're really talking about. When you're constantly listening to a podcast or connecting with others or reacting to other things, you're not just in your own state and having your own thoughts, and that aren't just suddenly influenced by so many other thoughts. And I think there's value in that.
Do you think people are scared to get into that space?
I do. I think, okay, that's a really good question because, sometimes if I have a negative thinking, which like everyone has, I suddenly journal gratitude stuff and then it silences it. But I think a really important part of human development is being comfortable with yourself. And if you just are always distracting, being with yourself by just TV and screens and everything else, there's some really important things that happen when you're with yourself. And I think you can really hear, what do you really want to do with your life? Do I want to be with this person? Have I met my soulmate? Am I being present enough as a partner, as a mother? I think those kind of things you only really hear when you quiet the noise.
Yeah, I think that's where journaling comes into play big time.
Do you journal?
Yeah, I do a lot of journaling. Yeah. For me, it's I do it in the mornings just before I open my laptop. Typically, only during the week it'll be about 5 or 10 minutes, and then a bit longer.
Yeah. You ask yourself a question, or do you just free flow?
Freestyle mainly. Sometimes I'll have a topic in mind and try and work through it, or if there's a problem I'm trying to work through, I'll do that. But often it's just whatever comes to mind and however I'm feeling. And it just gives you a time to ground yourself and actually connect with your thoughts, because during the day it's often tough to do so. And
do you journal in a notebook or online?
No, in a notebook. In a notebook.
Because I have a couple, I love talking to other journalists. My husband's like, you're an extreme journaler, Tiffany, because I do a notebook. Then I have an online visual journal that I do in Keynote, where I put in images that inspire me, or I'll write about things I'm worried about or goals. And then on my Tech Shabbat, I have several. I pull out I have a little notebook, super small, like this big, of just things that make me laugh.
Okay.
Or that were like these really special moments from the week. And I take the whole page and I just write one thing in the center. And it's so much fun to go back into that notebook. And then I have a bigger one that I do only on Tech Shabbat, that I think back to my week. What are the big things that happened? What were the things I was worried about? What were the funny moment, whatever. And then what am I thinking about long term? So it's like much more long, weekly and bigger term thinking. I do keep some, and then I keep one in my bag lately. I talk about this in the book, so instead of pulling out the phone, if I'm waiting for someone at a restaurant, the instinct is to pull out your phone, but I have a day planner now. I went back to a day planner because I found so often I was pulling out my phone to put something in my calendar, and then I was down the rabbit hole. And now my journal, I'm like, oh, it's kind of fun to write in my journal. It's also on my Google Calendar, so it's almost like I have two, but I do all these like kind of mini interventions throughout the week to keep me off the phone.
Yeah. What are they?
And a lot of times I'm on the phone. I'm like, get off the phone, even with all that.
What are the interventions are you using throughout the week? So when you're not in your Shabbat, how are you managing your screen usage?
Well, I journal in the morning like you. I try to do all my creative thinking in the morning, writing. And I know that's my most creative time. And then there's no screens when we have dinner, which is really great. I mean, dinner's only like 30 minutes a day. That's the meal we eat breakfast we don't have all together because we're all on different schedules. And like I told you, my nighttime ritual, I keep extending, the bath, the reading, the like aromatherapy, whatever I can do to and I wear a watch now again. So when I need to know the time, it's what I look to. So, and I keep a notepad around. I list out all of these things in my book, put clocks back up around my house. You don't realize how many times you're just going to that for everything. We have a Polaroid camera for Shabbat, which is very fun. Polaroids are back. And we have a record player that we play in Tech Shabbat. That's the Tech Shabbat one. But I go into a lot of them in the book 24/6 on like how to bring more of these little boundary moments during the week.
Yeah, fair. One thing I was really fascinated by was the concept of eye contact. And you talked about this in the book. Can you expand a bit more about why eye contact is so important in not only your contacts day to day, but also with, your family members, your children, and the example you're setting with eye contact?
Mm-hmm. Well, where you're looking is where you're giving your attention, for sure. So, if your partner or your child's in the room and you're looking at your phone, that's who's getting the attention, is the phone. And of course, sometimes when you're working, I always wish there was like a blinking light that indicated when you really were working versus when you were just mindlessly scrolling. But I made a film all about the importance of eye contact and brain development from birth to 5 years, called Brain Power, from neurons to networks. And that's how a brain grows, is when a parent is making or a caregiver giving eye contact to a baby or a small child. And it's truly how you connect and how you grow their brain and shape their brain. So the more we're on screens and not doing that, it's not good. But even dogs are feeling more anxious. They're getting much less eye contact from their owners. I mean, I'm sure you've seen on YouTube where like the shots of the dogs pushing the phone away. Yeah. And in relationships, you need to connect authentically and give people your attention. Not all the time, but when you're talking with them. And now it's just like commonplace where people are talking and they just pull out their phone as they're talking. And it's like, you can't multitask also. It's impossible. There's lots of multiple studies to back that up. I have to catch myself, with that. I do all these things at my film studio. No phones on the table anymore. I put them in the bag. Don't have even your phone off on the table, because if I was sitting with you and you had your phone on the table, I would see that phone on the table and I'd be less focused on you, because I know that phone could go off any second and that it's like a ticking bomb. So yeah, eye contact has evolved in human evolution. The brain-eye connection is one of the most important things. It's our humanity. And it's where we experience empathy. You really look into someone's eyes. And like even right now, it's interesting, we're doing this over Zoom. And we are not making eye contact, because whoever invents the invention that puts the camera at the center of the screen so we can actually be looking into each other's eyes. There you are. Now you are. No, but it always happens on Zooms because you're looking at a different place and I'm looking. I'm like, why doesn't somebody just merge that? And then I really should just invent that. I think I might do that but yeah, it's all about eye contact. That's why like the majority of your photos, like people are looking in the wrong place and not looking at the camera on your phone. So they're always just, eyes are slightly off.
Yeah.
It's very annoying. I have to wrap up soon just because I have to go.
So just to finish up, a great question would be, a lot of people are listening to this and thinking, right, it's all great. It all sounds amazing. How do I even start? What are you gave 3 key tips to people. How can they start and implement this into their lives?
I think number 1, I would really recommend getting my book. As you said, you read it in a couple of days. A lot of people read it very quickly. It's a quick read, but it's a deep read, as you know. And I give you a lot of the reasons of the why and the how, and a lot of big picture thinking about this. So get the book 24/6. In the UK, I think you said it was available on Amazon, right? Yeah. And there's ebook, and I do an audiobook. The other thing is I would join the 24/6 living group on Facebook, because a lot of people doing it and a lot of support. I'm there answering questions. And then I would just write a list of what do you wish you had more time to do in your life? And that could include doing nothing. But is it reading? Is it exercising? Is it journaling? Is it walking? Is it doing art? What is it? Is it napping? Is it just, and write that list and have anyone in your life that wants to do it with you, write that list too, kids, partners, and fill the day with that. Fill the day with that. And it'll be the best day of your week every week.
Amazing. Love that. How can people find out more about what you do, Tiffany?
Yeah, I'm very findable online. I'm on Twitter a lot. That's and Instagram. So I'm Tiffany Shlain, and my last name is Shlain. And my website, 246life, 24, the numbers, and then sixlife.com or tiffanyshlain.com. And, I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, all those places. And I'm not, and then I go off. But I love the web. I'm loving the discussion on 24/6 living, which I think you'll really enjoy, because a lot of people like you are just starting it and they're like, how do I do this? Or how should I deal with this? And it's so much fun. And I'm not even really a big Facebook person, but I'm really seeing this community of all these people interested in the same concept. It's very fun. So, I have a love-hate relationship with technology. No, I don't even know if that expression works. It's just that I love it for when it really does things you couldn't do otherwise, but I don't love it when it takes away from just normal human things that are really great, like being connected with the people in the room right in front of you.
Amazing. Perfect way to end this. Thank you so much for coming on, Tiffany.
Oh, such a pleasure.
Thank you so much for being here today on this episode of RNT Fitness Radio. I'd love for you to do a quick little favor for us. Please head over to iTunes and give us a 5-star rating, leave a comment, and share it with your family and friends. If you're interested in learning more about how to transform your body and positively change your life, go to www.rntfitness.com and explore all our free content on offer. Thank you.